Thank you for joining us this evening to hear the presentation and to those that might provide testimony, whether verbally or in writing. This is a public hearing of the New York City Water Board on the topics of water rates and billing policies for the upcoming fiscal year 2022, beginning July 1st, 2021. As we did last year, we'll be holding the board's events in a virtual conference call format to facilitate communication in light of the pandemic. We'd ask that everyone please place their phone on mute in order to limit the background noise. I've placed several documents in the official record, including a notice appointing me as the hearing officer, verified copies of the public notices placed in the newspapers, a draft of the rate schedule that lists the rates and billing policies for the coming year, a public information booklet describing the proposed rates, and copies of the written testimony received by the board so far. The draft rate schedule and the public information booklet are available on the board's website, as is a copy of the presentation you'll be hearing today. This meeting is being recorded, and once prepared, an audio recording and transcript of the meeting will be made available on the board's website at nyc.gov/nycwaterboard. For members of the public who have difficulty hearing, there's a real-time text captioning feature to follow along with the meeting. You can find instructions at the Water Board's homepage by clicking the meeting materials link located under the announcement section. This link is also provided on the public announcement posted on the board's website. The agenda for today includes two sections. First, the Department of Environmental Protection will make a presentation explaining proposed water rates for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021, as well as billing policy modifications. Then, members of the public will have an opportunity to make a statement. If you're interested in testifying, you can speak directly after the presentation. We have several members of the Water Board with us today, as well as from the Department of Environmental Protection. We have Chief Financial Officer Joseph Murin and the board's treasurer, Omar Nazem. Finally, I'll add that if you're currently experiencing any issues with the bill, you can always reach customer service at 718-595-7000 or by emailing the board directly at nycwaterboard@gp.nyc.gov, and we'll help you. Before we get started,
Before we get started, there's somebody whose phone is not on mute. If you would mute yourself, we'd be grateful.
Now I'm unmuted. I was just going to say, Chair and members of the board, does anybody want to make any statements before we go to the presentation?
Mr. Deloach, thank you. This is Al Carney. First of all, I want to thank all of the members who are on the call for being with us tonight. I want to thank the staff, a number of staff people who joined us tonight. And finally, and most particularly, I want to thank our guests, those people who are on the call just to hear what's going on, but particularly those people who are on the call because they have submitted written testimony or plan to offer oral testimony during the proceeding. I think it's important to note that the Department of Environmental Protection has made a recommendation to this board. This board is in no way bound by that recommendation. And until these proceedings have ended, I want to make the point that we have not made any determination. There have been no sessions at which we have discussed the proposed rate increase. And we will not make any of those decisions. We maintain independence until we've had a chance to get together to sit and talk with each other and to determine what it is that this board believes is important to do this year. With that, I'll ask whether there are any other members who are on the call who would like to offer a comment. Hearing none, Michael, you have the floor.
Great, thanks, Chair. Now we're going to hear a presentation from Joseph Murin, our DEP's Chief Financial Officer. Joe?
Thank you, Michael. This is Joe Murin. I'm going to be referring to the presentation, as Michael noted, that is on the Water Board's website, and I'll be starting on slide number 2, which is the agenda for today. We'll be updating on the Department of Environmental Protection's operations and capital projects. We'll provide a financial and capital market update. We'll go through the proposed water and wastewater rates to be effective July 1st, 2021. And we'll go through the proposed rate schedule policy updates, and we'll have a preliminary FY22 budget outlook. Going to slide 3, an update on DEP operations in the last year. Water and wastewater services were maintained throughout the pandemic without interruption or impact to water quality. DEP is following CDC guidelines around workplace safety protocols. DEP's personnel able to work in remote digital format were assigned to remote work, and other personnel implemented social distancing, on-site temperature checks, and use of PPE at their work sites. After reaching a peak of 80% of office employees in remote work format, the DEP workforce began returning to work sites the week of May 3rd. On a typical day at current rates, 70% of DEP personnel are on site. Some pandemic measures remain in place, including a moratorium on water shutoff and digital work permits, as well as a pause on certain filing deadlines, such as billing appeals. Going to slide 4. I won't go through the list, but it does provide a detail of some of the capital projects that we did either initiate or complete during the past fiscal year. I'll pick up a few of the highlights, such as completion of the Pugsley Creek cleanup of the Bronx for $106 million, flood mitigation, green infrastructure, construction in Queens, and 3,000 green infrastructure assets for $222 million, and the Delaware Aqueduct bypass tunnel final liner installation in Newburgh and Orange County, which the total project cost is going to be $1 billion. Going to slide 5, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Omar Nazem, the board's treasurer.
Hello, everyone. So on slide 5, we have a short update on the board's operating revenues, which is at the top line, in a sense, the most fundamental financial statistic we track of the board, since that's the money that comes in to fund all the expenses that we incur in running the utility and funding our balance sheet. The numbers I'm talking about here are through almost the end of May, so the first 11 months of our June 30th fiscal year. The key point I'd communicate is that revenues are lower than they were this time last year by about 5.5%. It's a $194 million variance down that we're showing against by this time $3 billion and change year-to-date revenues. So it is lower, and that is a symptom of two things. One is higher delinquencies as customers are deferring paying their bills, given all the hardships everyone is well aware of due to the pandemic on the one hand. And on the other hand, we have lower water usage by our meter billed customers, which is most of them. And that means there's less revenue on a bill of a customer using less water. Since for a meter bill customer, the bill is simply the amount of water used times the rate. The combination of the two has left us with somewhat lower revenue than we had this time last year. Now, the board, when it adopted its budget for the year, was well aware that we would have some headwinds for this year, and they adopted a budget for the full year that was on a revenue basis nearly 13% lower than the fiscal year 2022 budget. So down 5.5, but compared to how we thought the year could have gone is good. It's still less revenue, but it is better than the sort of the cautious budget we had and the board had adopted last year. I say all of that just to kind of emphasize that although the pandemic is slowly passing and people are getting vaccinated, there are still substantial financial uncertainties the board and the system face, just given, particularly the speed of the recovery, as business activity resumes and visitors return to the city, and how all of that develops and plays out. The other statistic I would flag, just to kind of sort of illustrate why I'm sounding a note of caution. If you look at the delinquencies I mentioned, I'm going to focus here on 180-day delinquencies, not sort of simple shorter-term technical delinquency. Delinquencies are up about 27% through the end of April compared to last year, which is nearly 16,000 additional newly delinquent accounts. So a large spike, a sort of modest, but manageable reduction in revenue, just for reasons for caution in the months and the year ahead. So I'm going to turn to slide 6 now. I'll go quickly through 6 because it expands on something I referenced already on the previous slide. Most of our customers are meter billed, so how much water they're using is a big driver of revenues. If you look at what's happened segment by segment, it's interesting, and it kind of matches your intuition about what's happened. Smaller residential customers are using more water, multifamilies are using somewhat less, and the commercial sector is way down. So overall, you're down about 5% in terms of water use year over year, and that is a revenue headwind, as I mentioned. Slide 7. This is a bit of a wordy slide and has some technical concepts in it, so I'll just kind of abbreviate it. The idea of this slide is that the system raises the money it needs to build construction projects by selling bonds to financial investors via Wall Street banks, and that's an important thing because it means that what it costs us to build a construction project is not just the cost of construction of engineering and architecture firms and construction laborers. It's also what interest rate costs are in the debt markets. So we pay close attention to where interest rates are in the tax exempt markets, and that was an important thing to be paying attention to last year in 2020 because when the pandemic was in its sort of early accelerating phase in March and April, tax exempt market conditions were quite volatile and borrowing costs shot up a lot during that time. They came back down to more normal levels by the middle of calendar 2020, and today they're back at what we would consider normal, manageable levels. Our ability to issue debt is unaffected. We continue to issue sizable amounts of debt at good rates. Our credit rating is still strong. The outlook is still positive. All of that all of those good things, and certainly vastly better than the uncertainty we had back in the spring and that everyone had back in the spring of last year. So for slide 8, I'll hand it back to Joe.
Thank you, Omar. We're now going to slide 6, which is the system's 10-year capital investment plan. And this is a representation of what is in the capital budget for the fiscal years 22 through 2031, which is $20.4 billion. On that, there's about $7.5 billion, about a third is for wastewater treatment and management. That's our wastewater treatment plants and the ancillary equipment related to them. There's about a quarter of the budget, $5 billion, for sewer replacements and extensions. There's another just about $5 billion for water distribution, which is our dams and other, upstate assets. There's just under $2.5 billion for water supply and transmission. That's for water distribution and for in-city water mains. And then there's a slight portion for equipment, $600 million, which is for IT, facilities, and other, related equipment to support the system. Moving on to slide 9. This is the proposed rate that we have put before the board for their consideration. It's 2.76%. This shows how that rate compares to the other proposed rates or the actual effectuated rates over the past just about 10 years now. I will also note, which we'll go into a little further, there are enhancements to some of the affordability programs that the system offers to those customers that are most in need. Moving on to slide 10, this goes to indicate what the impact of the proposed rate increase of 2.76% would be on typical bills. For the average single family, which uses about 70,000 gallons per year, they would see an increase of their bill from approximately $967 a year to $994. That translates to just about $2.22 a month. For a multifamily user, which uses much less, those are mostly apartments, condos, co-ops. Those would see a monthly increase of about $1.65. For those billing customers on a multifamily conservation program, their monthly bill would estimate to go up by $2.42. And I will note that the minimum charge is being frozen again for this year. Moving on to slide 11, I'll turn this back over to Omar about the affordability programs.
Yeah, so this is I think this slide is a very positive slide and timely given all the effects of the pandemic that we've noted. The headline on the slide is our $20 million a year customer affordability budget is being, under the proposal, recommended to be increased by 50% to $30 million a year. And that increase of $10 million is being spread across 2 of our bill credit programs. We have a third on here, which I'll mention quickly in passing, just to advertise it more than anything. One of the programs we run is a leak forgiveness program, which is where if you own a property, there's a leak, you fix the leak, and we can see the fix based on water usage from your water meter. then we'll rebate back to you with a credit half of the cost of the leak. It's a very popular program. 4,000 properties a year enroll. It costs us about $4 million to run. We actually don't have an upper bound on the program, so it's more is available, but it ends up being about $4 million a year. That program is kind of budgeted to stay even. The other two programs, one, the multifamily program, is targeted at larger, affordable multifamily properties. We're expanding that program by 20%, an extra $2 million of funding. And that's going to let us go from 40,000 apartment units a year receiving bill credits to 48,000. It'll be similar, or actually identical program terms to last year. Otherwise, we'll do a rank ordering of all the applicants based on for most to least affordable, looking at average rent of the property compared to median income in the area. The other program terms, such as water efficiency, need to be current on the bills, will still be in place. But generally, the same program terms as last year's, just with that 20% funding boost. The bigger change and kind of the larger variance in terms of customer funding is the small property program, the home water assistance program. This is for tax class 1 properties, and the very smallest of the tax class 2. So this is built 1 to 4 unit buildings, kind of taking a little bit of the TC2s in as well. And what we're doing there is we're dramatically expanding the eligibility role. We're going to go from target 51,000 properties in the most recent fiscal year. We're aiming for 96,000 next year by opening up the category of property tax class exemptions with DOF and HRA that we're going to look at in terms of eligibles. So that's one, we're almost doubling the role of eligibles. Number 2, we're going to be giving everybody, both existings on the list already who've received the credit in past years, as well as newly eligibles, everyone, a larger bill credit. It's going to be $145 per customer account per qualified customer account. The credit today is $115.89. So this is a benefit to everybody who's newly enrolled, as well as the folks who've been in the program for a few years and seen the benefit, and they too will get an expanded economic benefit on their bill. So, Joe, I'll hand it back to you for slide 12.
Okay, thank you, Omar. So the next slide goes through how our water rates, even with the proposed 2.76% increase, remain affordable comparable to peers. I'll go to the bottom of the slide where it compares for 2021. New York City's average water rate this is for the single-family home, is $967. For the 30 largest city average that we use, it's $1,216 per year. So we have 20% less than the average across other large cities. And we believe even with this, the increase of 2.76, we'll still be within that range of being below the other large cities in terms of water rates that we're charging here in New York City. Moving on to slide 13, I'm going to turn these back over to Omar about the various policy updates that will be that we're proposing for the rate schedule.
So this slide 13 and the next 3 after this is a group these are more technical rate schedule billing amendments. I'm going to go quickly through these. If you have questions, you should email or call us or look at the website too. We have a draft of the rate schedule that goes through all the rules and amendments. We have what amounts to a mini administrative code that covers water billing. These are all amendments to that document. It's a 50-page document, and it's boring unless you do water utility billing for a living, but these are nonetheless important. Slide 13, we have a program called the Multifamily Conservation Program. The program is basically an exception to meter billing for larger affordable properties that have water efficient fixtures installed in more than 2/3 of the units. And they have to get a meter. They're not built on meter if they get in, but they have to get a meter. If you qualify for all that, you get a flat rate bill, not a metered bill. For a technical historical reason, we have a small portion of accounts in this program that haven't done all the paperwork they need to do. We're going to give them 1 more year of forbearance on the paperwork. They had until June 30th, 2021. We're giving them another year to June 30th, 2022. A very positive program. Just we're doing a year of forbearance for a small class of customers with a sort of a boring historical problem that you can email if you want to know more about the details on that. Slide 14 is not so much a change as simply clarifying the wording in the rate schedule to restate existing law and existing policies. The basic idea here is if you don't pay your bills on time, there's a late charge, as with with anything that's past due. There's an interest rate that accumulates. What the interest rate has to be is established in state law. It says you got to charge the same interest on overdue water bills as the city of New York charges on overdue property tax bills. So you're told where to go. You're told what the thing is. It's the same thing. Now that interest rate, or as it happens, a pair of interest rates is on overdue property tax bills is set by the city council in New York based on a recommendation from the banking commission, which has got a back and forth relationship in terms of how they set these things. So all we're doing in the rate schedule, we're simply saying that. We're saying it comes from state law based on what property taxes are in the city, based on what the city council and the banking commission happen to decide for the year. The reason we have to do that is because we have an old computer system that we installed in 1995, and it can only handle one interest rate. So we've had the rate schedule for years describing actual administrative practice, was distinct from kind of what state law and this kind of council banking commission framework requires, simply because the computer software couldn't do more than one interest rate. That's all changing for a great reason, which is we have a new $20 million computer billing system coming online, and this year, 2021, that it can do multiple tiers of interest rates. I will add one just thing to be aware of. It's not water board per se, but the city council, the banking commission are looking at a new thing, which would actually be a third tier of interest rates. In their back and forth, they may or may not adopt that, but that's just if they do that, that's a slightly different variation of what I've described on the slide here, which is the two tier interest rate. So that's 14. 15 and 16 are kind of the same idea. In the rate schedule today, we have a pair of billing incentives, which are designed to motivate property owners to install green improvements in their building. One is a water reuse system, the other is an on-site kind of wastewater treatment asset. In both cases, if you install one, you can get a discount. That's in the rate schedule today. That's not new. The discounts aren't changing. What's new for both of these is we want to expand the concept of eligibility away from the single property concept. All the billing we do is based around the idea of a property gets a bill. These discounts work the same way. A property installs an improvement, it can come apply, but it's eligible, gets a discount. What we want to do with both the water and the wastewater recycling assets is make it allowable. So if a group of properties under a common ownership, because it's part of a larger development, have recycling assets that are shared by different properties, they can come as a collective and apply collectively. So file applications property by property. But we want to make that possible, because what you're seeing more and more of the larger developments will have 1 to 2 assets, say, shared among 7 properties. There are different rates of inflow and outflow and where the reuse goes, and some don't use it, some do. But generally, that's kind of where the larger systems are headed, and we want to kind of open up the rate schedule to make that allowable. So that's really the change there. There are a couple of other technical changes too I won't go through, and then the rate schedule markup. Again, if you have questions on any of the details, you're free to call or email us at the board anytime. We can go through the minutia with you. So Joe, I'll give it back to you on page 17.
Okay, thank you, Omar. On slide 17, we have the preliminary water board financial outlook. And what we have here is the estimated fiscal year 2021 expenditures. And then in the other column, we have the preliminary FY22 expenditures. There's the 2 biggest components here, which is the Water Authority funds for debt service, which is $1.8 billion in fiscal year 21, and it's just under $1.8 billion for fiscal year 22. So pretty much holding flat. Then the next largest piece is the DEP operations and maintenance expenses, which is a net number. $1.5 billion, or just under 1.5 for 22, $1.6 billion for 21, and $1.6 billion for 2022. A slight increase, and that increase looks larger than it should, because there was a surplus in fiscal year 20 that rolled into 2021, which allowed it to mitigate the cost for that year, but did not decrease those costs. The cost that we're seeing increase overall is such items as the need for a Gowanus Canal remediation design, about $10 million, $10 million for work that has to happen at the Owl's Head treatment plant dock, $8 million for expected increase in chlorine costs, about $8 million in additional costs related to on the expense side for the new billing system, and then about $6 million for maintenance of our marine fleet and fire protection at the various wastewater treatment plants. One item I do want to note as we get to the bottom is that the city rental payment, which was paid, a partial payment in fiscal year 2021, there is no city rental payment, budgeted or expected to be requested from the city for fiscal year 22. So overall, we have a flat budget on the for the two fiscal year, going from fiscal year 21 to 22. But keep in mind that the rates are not set just for the 1 year, but for looking forward for 10 years. So it has to encompass what are both, anticipated increases in the out years, as well as continued growth in the capital program. Moving on to the last slide, slide 18. This is our last in-city public hearing. We do have a hearing tomorrow for the upstate rate, and the anticipated, on June 14th will be the budget and rate adoption meeting by the board, where they will give consideration and determine if the rate will be adopted, any other changes that are being proposed. That concludes the presentation. I will turn it back over to the hearing officer, Michael Deloach.
Thanks so much, Joe. I know we had a lot of people testify yesterday. We've got a lot of written testimony, and I don't believe we have anybody registered to speak today, unless someone is joined and would like to speak. Is there anyone on the call that would like to testify? Okay. Well, Joe Carney, as you know, you have all the copies of the written and verbal testimony for your review, and we'll turn it back over to you if you have any closing thoughts. That would basically conclude today's hearing.
Michael, thank you. And thank you, Joseph and Omar, for that tag team presentation. The style works very well. Thank you very much. It was excellent. It was an excellent presentation. There being no witnesses, no people offering oral testimony, I believe we may declare that this hearing is over.
Great. Thank you so much, Chair. This concludes today's hearing. Appreciate everybody's time. Have a good day.
Thank you all very much for being on the call.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, have a good evening.